This session is focused on creating the financial narrative as a companion to your basic narrative business plan. We are going to talk about two frameworks: the startup versus the scale up budgeting. The startup budgeting is what you need to get started just to make sure you have a business that is sustainable and profitable over time. The startup budget is very lean. You have a specific number of customers you want to hit as a validation to your business. Then you want to scale up the hockey stick by decreasing costs, automating, and as much as possible going to new market. We are going to budget the finance in two different parts: the startup costs and the scale-up costs. Let us review the Taste of Taiwan example. The business model is that it's a subscription model. It's a monthly snack club from Taiwan to Singapore. The startup model is very simple. It's a web-based advertising where we will ship the product from Taiwan directly to Singapore to begin with. That is the basic model. Once we have that, we also have a direct purchase model. We are using the monthly club as a way to expose different snacks to Singaporean consumer. And if they like the product, they can order just that one product from us directly through our direct business portal, which help us make even more profit. The sampler pack is a way for us to get a customer to sample what they like. And then when they want to have that snack on a regular basis, that is when we make the direct merchant profit by shipping directly to them. So the first part, the startup part, is the monthly club. Even though the monthly club will continue into the scale up phase, it is a customer acquisition tool. It is actually not the real profit. The hockey stick comes from when people start purchasing the snack in bulk and we handle the shipping. That is also when we make more money, because then we can start negotiating with our supplier on bulk discount. Because in the startup phase, we are purchasing these snacks from supermarket directly. Because even though we pay more per unit cost, we don't have a huge overhead, we don't have a storage issue, and we have more flexibility in the sourcing. But once we get to the scale, when we have hundreds of units purchased a month, we can move into a different distribution channel, which significantly lower our cost per unit, but demands more cash up front. So let's go through the budgeting part. This is the kind of concept I want you to think of. How do you do something very small scale in the startup phase to test everything? Then in the scale up phase, we find a way to replace those inefficient, expensive processes, something inexpensive and efficient. The first model we want to look at is called the revenue model. We're building up on our previous example of fixed costs and variable costs. This is how we are going to make money. I have put the Taste of Taiwan's variable cost and fixed costs into a diagram. The below diagram shows the entire revenue model in one glance. This is where you're going to figure out how you're going to acquire the customer, how you're going to supply them, and what money they're going to pay. If you can only show one slide to an investor, this is the slide you want. The revenue model shows how money is made, where the costs are, and how you're going to create your entire value chain together. In looking at the diagram for TOT, the Taste of Taiwan diagram, we have two distinct revenue models. The first one is the monthly membership. This revenue channel, the profit is not as high, but it's there because we want to move the member into purchasing large quantity of the snack they like once they have tried the Taste of Taiwan. That's where the real revenue comes in. So what we have shown with this diagram is that the membership model is actually a customer acquisition tool. The real profit comes from the direct purchase model because we get more profit per item. We also lower the cost and there's less wastage. I would highly encourage you to create a revenue model diagram like this with the numerical description from your variable and fixed costs, because this is going to be very useful in helping you conceptualize and understand where you're creating value, where the biggest cost structures are, and how you're going to arrange them and get a more efficient system. The second model we want to look at is the margin model. This shows very simply how much margin you have. This shows you how much money you're going to make. For every $100 the customer pays you, how much do you get to keep as profit? This is very simple. This is basically price you have determined minus the variable and the fixed cost structure you have chosen. The only challenge is how do you distribute the fixed cost? Because the fixed cost is a large number. The simplest model is to simply target a realistic unit per month and use that as the basis. So, for example, if based on the price of the Taste of Taiwan, the membership structure, we need to move around anywhere 20 units a month, we should be okay. So we would take 20 units times the price we have set minus the cost of delivering 20 units, and that will become our profit margin. In some business, such as the restaurant, the profit margin is typically around 40 to 70%. In the technology, the profit is huge. The profit margin is huge. This is the basis of the freemium model, where even a single-digit number of paying user can support the rest of the non-paying user because your cost structure is so low. So the preliminary margin model can help you understand how you are going to tweak the model to get more profit out of your system. The operating model is a little bit different. The operating model is unique because it focuses only on operating the business. It does not look at fixed cost. You only look at variable cost, but it doesn't look at the price of the product. So to take the Taste of Taiwan example, when the customer places an order, we get the order they want. So we would purchase the product, package it, and mail it. Let's assume each one of those is a 1 hour activity. So the operating cost to delivering one product is 3 hours. So the 3 hour would be the cost, and running at $100 an hour, so it was $300 operating cost to deliver one package. But the package itself, we did not calculate the cost of the goods because that's a completely different thing. So the operating cost is the 300 only, even though the real cost of the entire value chain is 300 plus the goods. So this could up to be 400, 500. But we want to calculate the operating cost because we need to understand how much we need to reserve for operation in order to run the business, in addition to the product. For startup, this is not as big of a deal because unless you're making a complex machinery or product, you're typically donating your time for the first couple months of the startup. So the best model is to pay yourself a stipend and to use the stipend to calculate the cost of the product. The working capital model is a calculation based on the previous operating model. This is where you have to estimate how much money you need in order to run the business. This includes salary, but this also includes inventory. In the Taste of Taiwan example, working capital would include the salary or the stipend of the people running the business, as well as how much inventory we have to keep in stock. But this is flexible. Some companies buy inventory first, then sell it. Some companies take the sales order first, then buy the inventory. So depending on how you structure your operating method, you will have different working capital requirements. For Taste of Taiwan, we operate on a monthly deadline. So at the end of the month, we will ship the product out. So we know we have until the end of the month to know how much we need to buy. So we typically buy 2 days before the deadline, and then we fill it. So that way, but when the customer sign up for the membership, they already paid. So they prepay for the service. So we get the cash before we expend any of our own. In this way, we have very, very low capital requirement. But this is only because we're purchasing the goods from supermarket, and it's cash and carry. If when we shift over to direct purchase from wholesaler, we may have to pay upfront, maybe a month in advance, before we get the goods. So this means the timing of our expenses become important. But because in the startup model, we are using this model, we pay a higher penalty, financial penalty for having to purchase retail rather than wholesale. So your working capital has an assumption of when do you get the money in and when do you get the money out. The difference between the two over a 1 month period is your working capital. If you, at the beginning of the month, you got to pay $1,000 out to supplier, and the end of the month, you taking $2,000, and your overhead is $3,000. That gives you ability to calculate your working capital. How much money do you have to have on hand, reserve to run the business? A lot of time, cash flow become an issue because the timing of the outgoing money and the incoming money are stretched into 2-3 month period. With some standard business, you have to pay a month in advance, then you don't get the money until another month after you issue the invoice. And you can't issue the invoice until your product has been shipped. So from when you buy the product to be shipped to the customer, it may be 3 months later until you see the income. So you gotta understand what is your money cycle. For a lot of app business, it's very simple. It's you pay on download, so you don't have to worry about that. But for a lot of business that has physical product, it gets difficult. And for a company with reservation, depends if you take the money at the moment of reservation or not. This will affect your obligation to other parties, as well as how much cash you need to keep on hand. And also remember, with a reservation system, if you reserve a space for someone, they don't show up. That's a space you could have sold for profit, but doesn't. So you actually lose an opportunity cost. Think about an airplane. The seat on the airplane are useless the moment the airplane takes off, because that's a seat that can never be sold again. That's why a lot of airplane company will sell their seat really cheap a couple hours before the airplane takes off, because some money is better than no money. The working capital is a very important thing to have. This shows your investor, you know how much money you need to survive and how much initial investment you need. So this is all part of the bigger picture. With the working capital model, with your profit model, with your revenue model, let's talk about the financing model. Now you should have some idea how much money you need to start your endeavor. This is a fixed cost, variable cost, and how much money you need every month to operate the business until it's profitable. This would be the operating and working capital model. The financing model, take a look at all this number and say, okay, if I am going to operate for a year, how much total money I need? Assuming we don't have any profit. Assuming we're going to break even in a year. This is where you have to say, okay, if my monthly operating cost is $2,000 and my startup cost is $10,000, for the first year, I need $2,000 times 12, $24,000 plus $1,000 for the startup. So I need $3,400 to survive the first year. And then based on that, you will go out and raise money. Typically the first round is triple F. Family, friends, and fool, you will offer a share of the company to them at certain, maybe you set aside 10% of your stock, and for $3,400, I offer 10% of the stock. So one share of the stock would be $340. Then you can go to the bank. Typically, bank won't lend you any money unless there's a guarantor, typically the government, or you have a collateral like land, or lease, or contract, or patent. The third one is investor. Investor will take more shares than your family, friends, or fool, but they will give you the cash up front. So you have many ways to finance your startup, but you have to know how much money you need. Else you're going to give away too much of equity, or you may have a wonderful business model that it takes 6-7 years to realize, like Twitter. You need to find the right type of investor to help you make the investment. So the FI model helps you have a basic understanding of what you need to operate. These are not precise, these are going to change. Right now, we just need to run through the very basic model to make sure it's profitable, it's sustainable, and you can grow it. The precision of these models are non-existent. These are just rough sketches that we will refine in detail later once we know we have the right model. Now let's unite the five model in context. Most business plan will require a 3-year financial projection, 3 to 5 years, 5 if you have infrastructure, 3 if you don't. So the first year typically will be the startup phase of the budgeting. Once you know you have the right product, the right market, the right customer, you will start scaling up. So year 2 and 3 would be the scale up phase of the business plan. So when we do the spreadsheet, there will be a 12-month sheet and a 5-year or 3-year projection on an annual basis. So we're going to be starting working on the startup sheet first, and then we're going to do the scale up sheet first. The link will be provided, and we will walk through them. We will. So the business plan is almost. So we will have a rough business plan. At the end of the spreadsheet, we should have a rough business plan, both the narrative and the numerical description of the plan in place. Now it's just fine-tuning and make sure that the idea we're trying to express, the evidence we're trying to present are as clear as possible.